The lobby of Hartwell Associates smelled like fresh paint and money. Glass everywhere, 40-foot ceilings. A reception desk carved from a single slab of black granite, behind which a young woman in a headset pretended not to watch what was happening in the center of the floor. What was happening was quiet. That was the thing that made it worse. No shouting, no scene, just a woman in a charcoal blazer, straight-backed, heels precise on the marble, holding out a small white envelope to a man in a maintenance uniform. The man stood still. He did not reach for it. She set it on the cart beside him. "Your access card will stop working at noon," she said. "Security will escort you out." The man looked at the envelope, then he looked at her. He said nothing. She turned and walked back toward the elevator bank. Her heels made a sound like a metronome, even, measured, final. The young woman behind the granite desk stared at her screen. The cursor blinked. The man in the maintenance uniform picked up the envelope. He did not open it. He folded it once and put it in the breast pocket of his shirt, just over his heart. Then he went back to pushing his cart. Nobody said anything. Nobody asked why. That was how it ended, with a folded envelope and a silence so complete you could hear the air conditioning cycle through. What nobody in that lobby knew was what had happened 8 hours earlier in the dark on a rain-slicked stretch of Meridian Road, where a car had gone off the embankment and a man, this man, the one with the cart, had waded into 4 feet of cold water and pulled someone's son out through a shattered window with his bare hands. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. We always do. His name was Marcus Cole, and he arrived at Hartwell Associates every morning at 5:47 a.m. Not 5:45, not 5:50. The building's service elevator log, which nobody ever read, showed the same timestamp every weekday for 2 years and 4 months, 5:47. A man so consistent he set his own kind of clock. He took the service elevator to the 27th floor first. Always the 27th floor. That was where the executive suite lived, the corner offices, the Rosewood conference room, the private boardroom with the long table and the chairs that cost $4,000 apiece. The kind of room where decisions were made that affected people who would never set foot inside it. Marcus cleaned it before anyone arrived. He started at the east window, working counterclockwise. He used a cloth folded into quarters, never the same side twice. The glass looked out over the city, and on clear mornings the downtown towers caught the first light and threw it back across his face as he worked. He never paused to look at the view. He had learned not to pause. His cart was organized the way a surgical tray is organized. Every product in the same position every morning. The microfiber cloths in a stack of 6, blue on top, white below. The spray bottles labeled in his own handwriting, not the manufacturer's labels, which he'd found imprecise. His labels said things like glass, east wing and boards, dry only and floors, 19 through 22. Nobody had asked him to do this. It was just the way his mind worked. His supervisor, a heavy-set man named Glenn Parsons, who smelled of fast food and managed the facilities team with a combination of benign neglect and mild resentment, had once asked Marcus why he relabeled everything. Marcus had looked at him. "So it doesn't get used wrong," he said. Glenn had nodded as if he understood, which he did not. Marcus lived 40 minutes from Hartwell Associates by bus. He did not own a car. This was a choice, not a poverty, though from the outside the distinction was invisible and most people did not try to see it. His apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building on Crestfield Avenue that had been renovated badly in 2009 and not touched since. The hallway carpets were the color of old mustard. The elevator worked 3 days out of 4. The view from his kitchen window was a parking structure. None of this seemed to bother him. The apartment itself was clean in the way that Marcus was clean, not compulsively, not performatively, but with a quiet thoroughness that suggested he simply could not tolerate disorder. Books arranged by height on a shelf above the radiator. A kitchen where every utensil had a place and lived in it. A small table near the window with 2 chairs, though only one was ever used. On the table, a photograph in a plain wooden frame. A woman, mid-30s, laughing at something off camera, dark eyes, one hand raised as if to say stop, don't take it. The photographer had taken it anyway. Behind her, out of focus, a hospital room, white walls, an IV stand just visible at the frame's edge. Marcus had taken the photograph 4 years ago, 3 weeks before she died. Her name had been Diane. Their son's name was Theo, and Theo was 8 years old and had his mother's dark eyes and his father's impossible stillness. And he was the reason Marcus Cole got on a bus at 5:10 every morning and came home on a bus at 3:45 every afternoon and did not complain about the 40-minute ride or the mustard-colored hallways or any of it. Theo had been diagnosed with a rare form of juvenile arthritis at age 4. The medication, the real medication, the kind that worked, cost $1,100 a month after insurance. Marcus had done the math many times. He knew exactly how many hours of work the medication cost. He had organized his life around that number the way he organized his cart. This was not discussed at work. It was not discussed anywhere. It was simply carried. The people on the 27th floor knew Marcus the way you know a piece of furniture. You notice when it's gone, you don't notice it when it's there. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with the kind of hands that tell a story if you know how to read them, thick-knuckled, precise, the palms calloused in the places that come from years of carrying weight. He kept his hair cropped close. He wore his uniform dark gray with Hartwell Facilities embroidered over the left breast, with a neatness that some of the executives could not manage with suits that cost $3,000. He had been, before all of this, something else entirely. There was a framed certificate in the bottom drawer of his dresser at home, wrapped in a cloth and never displayed. The certificate read Marcus T. Cole, licensed structural engineer, State of Illinois, number 42,871. Beside it, in the same cloth, a photograph of a younger Marcus in a hard hat on a construction site, pointing at something above the frame with a rolled blueprint under his other arm, grinning in the way people grin before the world rearranges itself. He had left that career 8 years ago, when Diane's first diagnosis came. The hours weren't right, the insurance wasn't right, nothing was right. He had made a calculation, not a sacrifice. He did not think of it as a sacrifice, just a calculation. What does Theo need? What arrangement produces that? Find the arrangement. He had found it. It was a maintenance cart on the 27th floor of a glass tower. He had never mentioned the certificate. He had never corrected anyone who talked to him slowly because they assumed he wouldn't understand. He had never winced, not once, in 2 years and 4 months. This also was simply carried. On the morning of Tuesday, the 9th, 4 days before the envelope, Marcus had done something he'd never done before in his entire tenure at Hartwell Associates. He stopped in the corridor on the 22nd floor and looked at a drawing. Not a painting, a set of architectural drawings framed and mounted on the wall as decoration, the kind of thing interior designers do with technical documents when they want an office to feel thoughtful. These were blueprints. The original plans for the Hartwell building, dated 1987, rendered in the old style, hand-drafted. Marcus stood in front of them for 45 seconds. His finger came up, not quite touching the glass, and traced the load-bearing wall on the east elevation. His head tilted slightly. Something moved across his face, quick and private, like a fish passing below still water. Then he picked up his cart handle and kept moving. Nobody saw it. Nobody was ever in the 22nd floor corridor at 6:15 in the morning. Except on that Tuesday, one person was. A young woman named Priya Anand, Hartwell's most junior associate analyst, had slept under her desk the night before after missing a deadline and working through it, and she was walking to the bathroom with her hair in a knot and her shoes in her hand when she came around the corner and saw the maintenance man standing in front of the blueprints. She watched him for a moment. She watched his finger trace the wall. She said nothing and went to the bathroom, but she remembered it. Later, she would think about it often, that gesture, the finger that didn't quite touch the glass, the quiet of it. She would remember it at the exact moment she needed to. Her name was Catherine Hartwell. She was 53 years old and had built the company from a 2-person consultancy in a rented office on West Adams into a $40 million structural engineering and project management firm that occupied floors 18 through 29 of a tower that bore her name on the lease. She slept on average 5 hours a night. She drank her coffee black and cold and did not eat breakfast and had not taken a vacation in 3 years. There was a framed profile of her on the wall of the 27th floor reception area. Chicago Business Review 2021, the iron blueprint, and she had not been the one to hang it there. One of her assistants had done it while she was traveling. She had looked at it once on returning and then never looked at it again. She wore charcoal or slate or dark navy, never black. She thought it tried too hard. Her office faced north, which she preferred, indirect light, no glare on her screens. She had a son named Daniel. He was 24. She had, over the years, gotten better at work and worse at knowing what to do with her hands when she sat across from him at dinner. The new VP of Operations had arrived 6 weeks ago. His name was Richard Voss, and he came with a reputation, a corner office handshake, and a smile that arrived slightly before the rest of his face. He was 41, lean, with the particular confidence of a man who had spent his career being right in rooms where the stakes were someone else's problem. He had been recruited hard. Catherine had recruited him herself. He had come from a competitor with a client list and a reorganization plan and a way of presenting data in clean slides that made everything look manageable, inevitable, already solved. She had trusted the slides. This was, later, the thing she would hold against herself most. Not the decision, not even the speed of it. The slides, that she had trusted slides over the slow accumulation of something less legible, the way certain people move through a building, the way they treat the people they don't need. Richard Voss had noticed Marcus Cole approximately 36 hours after arriving at Hartwell Associates. He had noticed him the way a certain kind of person notices maintenance staff, not with malice initially but with a categorizing eye, the eye that is always doing math. Headcount, overhead, efficiency ratios, human beings as line items. He had pulled the facilities roster on his second day, 12 staff, 6 cleaning, 4 maintenance, 2 supervisors. He had flagged it for review. "Glenn," he said at a brief meeting on his third day, "I want to streamline facilities. Outsource to a contract service, probably cut costs by 40%. I'll need you to document everyone's performance record." Glenn had nodded the way Glenn nodded at everything, which was to say without any real understanding of consequence. "Sure," Glenn said, "I'll pull the files." What Richard had not anticipated, or perhaps had not cared to anticipate, was that the performance files would be uniformly excellent. Not good, excellent, and not across the board, which might have looked like grade inflation, but in the specific, documented way that tells you someone is genuinely keeping records. Tasks completed, response times, equipment logs, error rates. All 12 staff had solid records. But Marcus Cole's file was something else. 2 years, 4 months, 0 errors, 0 complaints. 1 commendation from the head of operations before Richard's time, noting that Marcus had identified a failing water main in the 24th floor ceiling cavity before it burst, had flagged it to engineering with a note so specific about load capacity and pipe degradation, rate that the engineer who received it had stopped, read it twice, and asked Glenn who had written it. Glenn had not known. The commendation didn't say who had originally caught it, it just said facilities staff, a line item, unsigned. Richard had read this file once and set it aside. Then he had gone looking for something else. A man like Richard Voss does not set up a trap clumsily. He was patient, he watched. He understood that the cleanest way to remove someone from an organization was to let the organization do it for you, to find the lever that was already there and apply the right pressure at the right moment. The lever he found was attendance. Marcus Cole had a perfect attendance record, but the building's digital log system, the one that tracked badge swipes, elevator access, all of it, had a configuration panel in the facilities management software that Richard had access to as the new VP of Operations. It took him 11 minutes to adjust the timestamp offset on the service elevator log, not delete records, not forge them, simply shift the capture timestamp on Marcus's badge swipe record by 32 minutes. It looked like a system glitch. It looked like a man who had been arriving late. It looked to anyone who didn't know better like a pattern. 3 weeks of adjusted logs. In, out, a consistent 32-minute delay from his scheduled 6:00 a.m. start. It was not dramatic. It was not flagrant. It was exactly the size of a performance issue that justifies a written warning and then a final warning and then a termination. Richard brought the logs to Glenn on a Wednesday afternoon. Glenn looked at them confused. "These don't match what I see," Glenn said. "Marcus is always." "The system logs are what HR uses," Richard said, "not your eyeballing." Glenn frowned, opened his mouth. "I'll handle the conversation with HR," Richard said. "You just document that you've been informed." Glenn documented it. That was the thing about Glenn. He was not malicious either. He was just tired, and middle management tired looks a lot like complicity from a certain angle. None of this reached Marcus. He continued to arrive at 5:47. He continued to clean the east windows first, counterclockwise. He continued to carry Theo's medication cost in the back of his mind like a low-frequency hum that he had learned over years not to hear consciously. On the Wednesday night that Richard submitted the falsified logs to HR, Marcus was helping Theo with a school project at the kitchen table. It was a model of the solar system, constructed from styrofoam balls and coat hanger wire. Theo's hands moved carefully because his hands often hurt, and Marcus had learned to sit beside him and let him do the work and only intervene when Theo looked at him directly, which was their system. Theo looked at him. Marcus held the wire steady while Theo wound the string. "Is Mars red all the way through?" Theo asked. "Just the surface," Marcus said. "Iron oxide rust." "Rust from what?" "From when Mars had water." Theo considered this. "It rusted in the water and then the water left." "Something like that." Theo looked at the red styrofoam ball. "That's sad," he said. Marcus looked at it too. "Yeah," he said, "I guess it is." They sat with that for a moment. Then Theo asked if they could have cereal for dinner, and Marcus said yes, and the evening became about something else, the way evenings do. Thursday. Friday. The following Tuesday. On Tuesday night, the night that would change everything, it rained. It had been raining since late afternoon, the kind of March rain that comes in sideways and makes the roads feel like a memory of themselves. The temperature had dropped 8 degrees in 4 hours. On the elevated sections of the highway, a light glaze of ice had formed that the weather service would not officially report until 6:00 a.m. the next morning. Marcus's bus home ran late. He didn't mind. He had his bag. He had the paperback he'd been reading for 2 weeks, a novel about a lighthouse keeper that he read 6 or 7 pages at a time and was in no hurry to finish. He got off at his stop at 4:23 p.m. He was walking home, not rushing, the rain loud on the bus shelter roof, when he heard it. Not an explosion, not a crash exactly. A sound more like a long tearing and then something heavy striking something immovable and then silence. He stopped. He stood for a moment with the rain on his face. Then he ran. Meridian Road curved sharply just past the bus shelter, and on the inside of the curve there was a guardrail, and beyond the guardrail a steep embankment that dropped 15 feet to a drainage ditch. In dry weather, there was almost no water in the ditch. In the rain, after a week of March thaw, there was 4 feet of moving water and debris and cold. A car, a silver sedan, newer, crumpled at the front where it had hit the guardrail post before going over, was in the ditch. Passenger side partially submerged, the headlights still on, casting moving light into the water. Marcus was on his phone as he ran. "Car off Meridian Road at the Crestfield curve, in the water, sending my location." He dropped his bag at the top of the embankment. Then he went over the rail. The water was a shock. He had expected it to be cold. It was colder. The current moved, not fast but steadily, and the bottom was soft, and he sank to his knee on the first step. He got his footing and moved to the passenger side where the window was half submerged. Inside, a young man, 20-25, seatbelt on, conscious, barely, a cut above his eye that was bleeding in the pink way that blends with water and looks worse than it is. The door was jammed. The window was shattered, but the frame had bent. Marcus looked at the frame. He looked at the angle of the car. He looked at the way the car was settling, slowly, incrementally, the front dropping forward as the soft earth gave way beneath the nose. He had maybe 3 minutes before the nose dropped enough to change the water level in the car. He did not say any of this aloud. He said, "I'm going to get you out. Can you hear me?" The young man moved his head, something between a nod and a flinch. Good, Marcus said. I need you to hold on to my arm, both hands, don't let go. He cleared the remaining glass from the window frame with his sleeve, slowly, deliberately, every sharp piece accounted for. He checked the angle of the young man's neck before he moved him. He said, "Stay with me once, just once," and then he worked. It took 9 minutes. The paramedics, arriving at minute 11, found Marcus Cole standing on the embankment in wet clothes with a young man sitting beside him, wrapped in Marcus's jacket, a folded cloth from Marcus's bag pressed against the cut above his eye. The young man was shaking, Marcus was not. A paramedic asked Marcus if he was all right. "I'm fine," Marcus said. He hit his head, left temporal area, possible compression. His pupil response was slow when I first got there. It's normalized since. He was in and out for about 4 minutes. The paramedic looked at him. "You medical?" she asked. "No," Marcus said. She nodded slowly and went to work. The young man's name, Marcus didn't know this yet, wouldn't know it for 3 days, was Daniel. Daniel Hartwell. He had been driving home from a friend's apartment, tired, taking Meridian Road because the highway was backed up. He had hit the patch of ice at the curve at 47 miles an hour and had not had time to correct. He had been in the water for 6 minutes before Marcus went in after him. Marcus stayed with the paramedics until they told him he could go. He answered the police officers' questions, calm, precise, specific. He declined medical attention for himself. He retrieved his bag from the top of the embankment. His book was wet through. He walked home. He got Theo from Mrs. Aucaffer's apartment downstairs. Theo did after-school care with her. They had an arrangement, and he made dinner and helped Theo with his reading and put him to bed. He did not sleep. Not from agitation, not from drama. He simply lay in the dark and felt the cold water and listened to the building settle around him, the old pipes and the wind and the particular sound of 3:00 a.m. in a city that doesn't entirely stop. At 4:30 a.m. he got up. He made coffee, he sat at the table and looked at Diane's photograph. He thought about the car, the angle of the frame, the 3-minute window. He thought about the boy's eyes, the slow pupil response which had worried him, and the way it had normalized, which had relieved him more than he had let show. He thought about what 4 feet of water feels like at the end of March. At 5:10 a.m. he put on his uniform and went to wait for the bus. He was late to Hartwell Associates for the first time in 2 years and 4 months. He arrived not at 5:47 but at 6:43, 56 minutes late. He swiped his badge at the service entrance. He took the elevator to 27. He started on the east windows counterclockwise, working quickly and quietly to make up the time. His knuckles were swollen where he'd cleared the glass from the window frame. He worked around it. At 7:55 a.m., Glenn appeared in the doorway of the boardroom. He looked uncomfortable. Glenn usually looked uncomfortable, so this was not immediately alarming. "Marcus," he said, "HR wants to see you, now, and Richard." The meeting was held in HR Director Maureen Spell's office, a beige cube on the 19th floor with a rubber plant that was losing the will to live. Richard Voss was already there when Marcus arrived. He was seated to the side, relaxed, one ankle on his knee. His expression was neutral in the particular way of someone who has rehearsed neutrality. Maureen set a folder on her desk. "Marcus, you're aware that we've been tracking a pattern of late arrivals over the past 3 weeks." Marcus stood. There was one empty chair. He didn't sit. "The logs show a consistent 32-minute delay from your scheduled start," Maureen continued. "This morning you arrived at 6:43, which is 56 minutes late." "Yes," Marcus said. "Combined with the prior pattern we have grounds for." "I understand," Marcus said. There was a pause. Maureen looked at her folder. Richard looked at the rubber plant. A clock on the wall made a soft sound every 30 seconds. "Do you have anything to say about the pattern?" Maureen asked. Marcus looked at her, a long, even look. "I do not," he said. He thought about explaining. He thought about the drainage ditch and the 4 feet of water and the 9 minutes. He thought about the cold and the window frame and the boy's eyes. He said none of it. It was not stubbornness. It was something older and quieter than that, the knowledge that explaining yourself to someone who has already decided is not explanation. It is performance, and he had never been able to perform. Given the prior written warning on file, Maureen began. Marcus hadn't known about a written warning on file. There had been no written warning. He held very still. "We're terminating your employment effective today," Maureen said. "You'll receive 2 weeks of severance. Your benefits will continue through the end of the month." "All right," Marcus said. He signed what they put in front of him. He returned his badge. He went and collected his cart. Richard Voss did not speak during any of this. He sat with his ankle on his knee and looked at his phone. He nodded once slightly as Marcus left the room in the way of a man checking a task off a list. Catherine Hartwell was on a call with a client in Denver when Marcus was being terminated on the 19th floor. She didn't know the termination was happening. Richard had routed it through HR directly, as was his authority as VP of Operations. Routine facilities staff adjustment. She had too much else to look at. Later, she would replay this sequence. The call with Denver, the slides she had trusted, the man 2 floors below her signing a termination form while she talked about load-bearing specifications on a warehouse project. The simultaneity of it would stay with her. But that was later. The lobby. The granite desk, the young woman in the headset pretending not to watch. The charcoal blazer, the envelope, the folded paper set beside his cart. "Your access card will stop working at noon." The metronome heels, the elevator. The cart and the man, alone in the lobby with the city coming through the glass in the particular morning light that makes marble floors look like water. He put the envelope in his breast pocket. He did not open it. He walked out through the service door, not the lobby. He did not want to be watched walking out of the building where he had worked for 2 years and 4 months without a single complaint or error. He did not want to perform that either. Outside, it was raining again, lighter than the night before, the kind of rain that can't quite commit. He stood at the bus stop and thought about Theo's medication. $1,100. The math reorganized itself as it always did. Emergency, no panic, just recalculation. He took out his phone and made a note, things to do. The list was already forming. The bus came. He got on. Priya Anand had not slept well since Tuesday. She was 26, the most junior analyst at Hartwell Associates, which meant she did the work that was too detailed for everyone above her and too invisible for anyone to notice. She was good at her job in the particular, unrecognized way that junior analysts are good at their jobs, thoroughly, quietly, at 11 p.m. on weeknights when nobody was watching. She had been the one to see Marcus in the corridor on the 22nd floor, the finger that didn't quite touch the glass. She had not thought much of it then, but she thought about it now on Thursday, 2 days after Marcus had been walked out of the building because something else had happened. Her workstation was adjacent to the facilities management software terminal, which nobody had thought to lock down after Richard Voss's reorganization reshuffle, which meant that Priya, whose job sometimes required her to cross-reference building access logs for security compliance audits, had legitimate read access to the full system. She had gone in to pull an unrelated report. She had found, while navigating the log export interface, something that had no business being there. A timestamp offset setting. Applied to badge reader ID 7712. Marcus Cole's badge number was 7712. She knew this because she had seen him swipe in enough times, and because she was the kind of person who noticed things she hadn't been asked to notice. The offset plus 32 minutes, applied retroactively to 21 days of records. She sat with this for a long time. She looked at the system audit trail, which showed who had accessed the configuration panel and when. The username in the audit log was RVOSS, Richard Voss, Facilities Management Access, granted to him as part of his VP onboarding package. She looked at it for a very long time. Then she did something that later she would understand had taken more courage than anything on her resume. She took screenshots, properly timestamped with the system audit trail visible. She saved them to a personal drive. She printed them. Then she sat and thought about what to do with them. She was 26 and junior, and Richard Voss was a VP, and Catherine Hartwell trusted him, and this was a company where Catherine Hartwell's opinion was, functionally, gravity. What Priya had in her hand was evidence that a senior executive had deliberately falsified records to terminate a maintenance worker who had, as far as Priya could tell, done nothing wrong. She thought about the finger tracing the load-bearing wall, the blueprints, 1987, hand-drafted. She thought about what kind of person stands in front of old blueprints at 6:15 in the morning and reads them the way other people read novels. Then she picked up the phone and asked Catherine Hartwell's assistant for an urgent appointment. The assistant told her Ms. Hartwell's schedule was full. "Tell her it's about the facility's termination this week," Priya said, "and that it involves the system logs." There was a pause. "Let me check," the assistant said. Catherine Hartwell had not thought about the maintenance worker since Tuesday. This was not cruelty, it was the volume at which her days moved. $40 million firm, Denver client, Pittsburgh project behind schedule, Richard's reorganization plan, which she had reviewed and approved in a 2-hour block last month and which she still believed was strategically sound, even if some of the mechanics felt faster than she'd have preferred. She had 3 back-to-back calls Thursday morning and a board summary due by noon. At 10:40 her assistant knocked. "I have Priya Anand asking for 15 minutes. She says it's about the system logs and the facility's termination." Catherine looked up from her monitor. "Who's Priya Anand?" "Junior analyst, she's been here about 8 months." Catherine tapped her pen on the desk twice. "Send her in," she said. Priya did not sit down until invited. She set the printed pages on Catherine's desk without preamble. She said, "I found a timestamp offset in the badge swipe configuration. It was applied to one employee's record specifically. It made his arrival times look 32 minutes later than they actually were." Catherine looked at the pages. "The configuration was accessed by Richard Voss," Priya said. "The system audit log shows his username and the date." Silence. Priya waited. Catherine Hartwell had built her company on the ability to read structural drawings, which meant reading what wasn't there as much as what was. Load paths, stress concentrations, the place where the material would fail if you got it wrong. She read the pages in front of her the same way. "The employee," Catherine said, her voice was level, "Marcus Cole." "Yes. He was terminated yesterday." "Yes." Another silence. "Why are you bringing this to me and not to HR?" Priya looked at her steadily. "Because HR reports to Richard Voss," she said. Catherine's pen tapped once. "Leave these with me," she said. She spent 40 minutes verifying independently what Priya had brought her. She knew enough about the system, she'd been in this building for 15 years, to pull the raw log data herself without going through facilities management. She found the offset. She found the access record. She found the 21 days. Then she called the system administrator and asked him to pull the full, unmodified data. The real records, the raw badge logs before the configuration offset, showed Marcus Cole arriving at 5:47 every day for 2 years and 4 months. Every day. She put the pages down on her desk and looked out the north window. The indirect light, no glare. She thought about what it means to build a company on the principle that the math doesn't lie, that you go back to first principles, that you don't assume, you verify. She had not verified. She had trusted the slides. She sat for a long time. Then she asked her assistant to find her Richard Voss's full personnel file and to get her Marcus Cole's address. The Richard Voss conversation was quiet and short and not something that happened in a conference room. It happened in her office, door closed, 30 minutes after she'd received Marcus's address. She placed the printouts on her desk. Richard's expression shifted in a way she would analyze later, not surprise exactly, more like recalibration. a man recalculating risk, not experiencing remorse. "This looks like a system glitch," he said. She looked at him. She had been looking at structures for 30 years. She knew exactly where a beam was failing. "Your username is on the audit log," she said. "System glitches can." "Richard," she said. He stopped. She looked at him the way she looked at the north window, without expression, directly. "I'm going to need your badge and your laptop," she said. "Legal will be in touch." He opened his mouth. "That's all," she said. He left. She sat very still for a moment after he left. She did not notice the expression on her own face until she caught her reflection in the darkened second monitor on her desk, the one she never used, and did not recognize what she saw there. Something tightened and old and facing itself. She looked away. She picked up her coat and her car keys. Marcus was at the library on Crestfield Avenue when his phone buzzed. He went to the library on weekday afternoons when Theo was in school. He used the computers there to look for work. He had, over 3 days, sent 7 applications, 2 engineering firms, a project management consultancy, 3 maintenance positions, a facilities supervisor role. He had also, on the first day, called Theo's doctor's office and explained the situation clearly and asked about a payment plan. The nurse had put him on hold for 5 minutes and come back with an offer of 90-day deferred billing and a packet of information about a pharmaceutical assistance program. Marcus had noted all of this in his phone, column by column: problem, option, timeline, cost. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He looked at it, set it face down, kept reading. It buzzed again. He picked up. "Mr. Cole," said the voice, "this is Catherine Hartwell." He was quiet for a moment. "I've reviewed the system logs," she said. "The real ones. I know what you're thinking. I know what I don't deserve to ask." A pause. "I'm outside your building," she said. "I drove here myself. I want to speak with you if you're willing." He looked at the library ceiling. An old building, solid, the kind of pre-war construction with a cast-iron frame that you didn't see built anymore. He had noticed the frame the first time he walked in here. "I'll be out in 5 minutes," he said. She was standing by her car on Crestfield Avenue in the thin afternoon light, and she did not look like the profile on the wall of the 27th floor. She looked like a woman who had been sitting at a desk for too many years and had recently found out something about herself she hadn't wanted to know. Her coat was expensive and looked like she'd forgotten she was wearing it. Marcus walked up and stopped. He did not offer his hand, neither did she. "I owe you an explanation," she said. "You owe me more than that," he said, "but go ahead." She told him all of it: the logs, Richard Voss, the configuration panel, what Priya had found. She told him clearly and without softening any of it, which he respected. He said nothing. He listened the way he did everything, completely, without performing attention. When she finished, he looked at the parking structure across the street. "How long had he been planning it?" Marcus asked. "We think it started within 2 weeks of his arrival," she said. "Why?" She paused. This was the question she'd been sitting with all afternoon. "My best assessment is that your file made him nervous," she said. "A zero-error record for 2 years, the engineering note. He was building a cost reduction case, and you were the kind of data point that complicates a simple narrative." Marcus nodded slowly. He thought about the log of commendations in his file, the water main, the note he'd written that an engineer had read twice. "I was inconvenient," he said. "Yes." "So was the answer to remove me." "Yes." He looked at her. "And you trusted him," he said. She held his gaze. "I trusted his presentation more than my instincts," she said. "That's the accurate version." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Around them, Crestfield Avenue moved: a bus, a delivery truck, 2 women with a stroller, the ordinary movement of an ordinary street. "I have a son," Marcus said. "He has a medical condition. The medication is $1,100 a month. Your termination put that at risk." Catherine Hartwell held still. "I know," she said. "I want to address that." "That's a start," he said. She had come prepared with an offer. Reinstatement, back pay for the 3 days, plus a severance equivalent sum as acknowledgement of harm. She laid it out clearly. He listened. That's not enough, he said. She waited. I'll come back, he said, but not to the same position. She nodded. Name what you want. He didn't hesitate. He had been thinking about this, or something like it, for 2 years and 4 months, in the way you think about something you've told yourself doesn't matter and find it still waiting, quietly, every time you look. I want to do structural review, he said. Building compliance, facilities, systems assessment. I have the qualifications. If you look, you'll find them. She nodded slowly. She looked at him properly for the first time since she'd arrived, the way you look at a structural drawing when you finally understand the load path, the thickness of those hands, the precision of the way he'd said load capacity in his mind, the way Priya had described the blueprint corridor. I'll look, she said. I also want what happened with Richard Voss to be addressed publicly, he said, not in an email, not in a company statement, in the lobby where it happened. In the lobby, she repeated. That's where you terminated me, he said. That's where the record should be corrected. She did not flinch. All right, she said. He looked at her for a moment. There's one more thing, he said. Name it. I want Priya Anand recognized, he said. Whatever she did to bring this to you, she should be recognized for it, by name, publicly. Catherine Hartwell looked at him. You don't even know what she did, she said. I know she did something, he said. Nobody brings hard information to the person at the top without it costing them something. It should cost her nothing. The street moved around them. The light on Crestfield Avenue was the flat, honest light of late afternoon, and it showed things without flattery. Catherine put out her hand. Monday morning, she said, lobby 9:00 a.m. He shook it. One more question, she said. Tuesday night, were you the one who called 911 about the car on Meridian Road? Something shifted in his face just slightly. He looked at her steadily. There was an incident, he said, on my way home. The person in the car, she said, he's my son. Marcus was very still. She watched him. His face did not perform anything, not surprise, not satisfaction, not the small recalibrating calculation that most people can't suppress when they discover their leverage. He just looked at her. Is he all right? Marcus asked. Yes, she said, he's home. He has a concussion and 3 stitches and he's watching terrible television and he's all right. Marcus nodded. Good, he said. That was all he said. Not you're welcome, not now you understand, not does this change the math for you. Just good. She stood on the sidewalk on Crestfield Avenue and watched him go back into the library, and she thought about the kind of person who pulls your child out of a flooding drainage ditch in March and then shows up the next morning to clean your windows and does not say a single word about it. She thought about what that kind of person is worth. She thought about the slides she had trusted. She drove home in silence, both hands on the wheel. Monday morning. The lobby of Hartwell Associates at 9:00 a.m. on a Monday was not quiet. It was the particular organized noise of a professional building at the start of a week, the revolving door cycling, the elevator chimes, the low-level percussion of 200 people producing forward momentum. It became quiet at 9:04. Catherine Hartwell had asked the facilities team, the actual facilities team, Marcus's former colleagues who had been told only that something important was happening, to position themselves near the reception area. She had asked reception to hold the elevators briefly. She stood in the center of the lobby floor in the same place where, 6 days ago, she had handed Marcus Cole a white envelope. Marcus stood a few feet away. He wore his own clothes, not the uniform. Dark trousers, a plain gray shirt, a jacket he had owned for years that was clean and pressed with the particular care of someone who owns few things and maintains them exactly. People had stopped, the way people stop in a building lobby when something is breaking from the pattern, the small, alert stillness of dozens of people suddenly paying attention without being told to. Catherine Hartwell did not have a microphone. She did not need one. She had been addressing rooms for 30 years. 6 days ago, she said, I stood here and terminated Marcus Cole's employment. I told him his access card would stop working at noon. The lobby was fully still now. I did so based on information that I did not verify, she said. The attendance records I relied on were falsified. I have since confirmed this through the system audit trail, and the person responsible for the falsification is no longer employed here. She did not say Richard Voss's name. This was deliberate. A man who had maneuvered in the dark did not deserve the stage, not even for a nomming. I want to be clear about what I'm saying, she continued. I am not saying there was an administrative error. I am not saying the system failed. I am saying that I failed. I was given false information by someone I trusted, and I moved too quickly, and a man who had served this company without a single complaint or error for 2 years and 4 months lost his job because of my failure to ask the right questions. She paused. I drove to Marcus's apartment on Thursday to ask him to return. He agreed, and he set his own conditions, which I accepted. She looked at him then. He is returning not as facilities staff but as a structural compliance analyst, a role that makes use of qualifications he has held for years that we never thought to ask about. A murmur moved through the lobby, quick, involuntary, the sound of people recalibrating. He also asked me to publicly recognize one of our junior analysts, Catherine said. Priya Anand spent her own time investigating a discrepancy she could have ignored and brought it to me at no small personal risk. She is the reason this is being corrected. I want her to know that her instincts were right, her courage was right, and her future at this company reflects that. Somewhere toward the back of the gathered people, Priya Anand was standing very still with her coffee cup in her hand, not moving. Catherine turned to Marcus. She put out her hand. Marcus, she said, I'm sorry, welcome back. He shook her hand. He did not perform anything. He did not smile for the room or make a speech or milk the moment. He shook her hand and nodded once, and then he looked around at the people who had gathered, the facilities team, the analysts, the receptionist at the granite desk who had been watching him that first morning, and he said quietly to all of them, Thank you for the work you do here, all of you. That was his speech. 3 sentences. The lobby began to move again. 2 weeks later, Marcus submitted his first structural compliance report. It was 41 pages, single-spaced, annotated with reference codes and load calculations and 3 diagrams he had drawn by hand. It covered the 22nd through 27th floors and identified 7 areas of deferred maintenance risk, 2 of which were, in his assessment, approaching the threshold of code violation. One of the 7 was the east wall support column on the 24th floor, the one he had been watching, without anyone knowing he was watching it, for 19 months. The engineer who received the report called Catherine's office directly. Where did you find this person? He asked. He was here, she said, we just didn't look. The pharmaceutical assistance program came through on the same week. Theo's medication cost dropped to $147 a month. Marcus sat at the kitchen table on a Thursday evening and looked at the letter for a while. Then he folded it and put it in the drawer where he kept important documents, and he went to help Theo with his reading. Theo was working through a chapter book about a boy who discovers he can talk to animals. It was a little young for Theo. Theo read ahead of his age, always, but he liked the illustrations and he was patient with things that didn't challenge him yet. He looked up when Marcus sat down. Dad, he said, do you think animals have words, like actual words in their heads? Marcus considered this seriously, the way he considered everything Theo asked. I don't know, he said, I think they have something, whether it's words exactly. Like a dog probably doesn't have words, Theo said, but maybe like a whale does. Maybe, Marcus said. Because whales sing, Theo said, and singing is kind of like having words. Marcus looked at his son, the dark eyes exactly Diane's, the careful hands resting on the page. That's a good thought, Marcus said. Theo looked pleased. He went back to his book. Marcus watched him read. Outside, Crestfield Avenue was doing what Crestfield Avenue did: buses, delivery trucks, the ordinary ongoing percussion of a city that never entirely stops. The light through the kitchen window was the last of the day, going gold against the parking structure across the street. Not a beautiful view, just a view. Marcus had a photograph to turn back toward the wall, but Diane's photograph had never faced the wall. It had always faced out. He had never been able to put it away, and he had stopped thinking of this as weakness. He looked at it now. Then he looked at Theo. He thought about the drainage ditch on Meridian Road, the 4 feet of cold water, the young man's eyes. He thought about a silver sedan with its headlights on, casting moving light into the dark. He had not told Theo about that night, not the details. He'd told him only that he'd helped someone, which Theo had accepted with the practical matter-of-factness of a child who has been raised to believe that helping someone is not remarkable, it is just what you do. He had not told anyone at Hartwell about it, not when Catherine had asked, not after. He had answered her question on Crestfield Avenue, "Were you the one?" and he had confirmed it and moved on, and he had not brought it up since, not as leverage, not as explanation, not even as context. The boy was all right, that was all that mattered. If he was honest with himself, and he usually was in the kitchen in the evenings when it was just the two of them, he was not sure what to make of the fact that the boy in the water had been Daniel Hartwell. He had thought about it. He didn't think there was anything to make of it. The world is smaller than it looks, and the cold is the cold regardless of whose son is in it. He had not saved Daniel Hartwell because he knew whose son he was. He had gone over the guardrail because there was a car in the water and a person inside it. The math was simple. 3 months later, Catherine Hartwell launched a new internal program, a skills audit for all facilities and support staff, anonymous questionnaire, any qualifications, certifications, degrees, or prior experience that staff held but had not declared. The results came back over 2 weeks. 23 people, an accountant working in the mailroom, a former nurse on the cleaning team, 2 engineers in facilities maintenance, a graphic designer in building services, a former high school teacher doing janitorial work on floors 18 and 19. Catherine read through each file carefully. She did not rush. She sent a personal note to each of them. Same message, exactly. I want to talk about what you know and how we can use it. Would you be willing to meet? 23 conversations. It took her 4 months. She fit them into the corners of her schedule, early mornings, lunch breaks, the half hour at the end of the day she had previously spent reading emails she would answer the next morning anyway. She came away from each conversation with the particular feeling of someone who has opened a wall and found the structure inside was more interesting than the surface had suggested. She told this to Marcus once in passing in the corridor outside his new office on the 22nd floor, the floor with the blueprints, 1987, hand-drafted. He looked at her. "A wall is always more interesting inside," he said. Then he went back to his desk. The scratched watch that Marcus wore and had always worn, even in the maintenance uniform, was an old Seiko that had belonged to his father. The crystal was scuffed from decades of use. The band was leather, replaced twice, always with the same plain brown. The watch ran 20 seconds fast, and Marcus knew this and kept it that way. When people asked him why he didn't get it fixed or replaced, he said, "It keeps good time." They usually looked at him and said, "But it runs fast." And he would say, 20 seconds, I know where those are. He wore it every day. He wore it in the maintenance uniform, and he wore it at the kitchen table, and he wore it on the bus, and he would wear it eventually in a corner office on the 22nd floor of a glass tower that caught the morning light at a specific angle, and threw it across his desk in a way that made the old blueprints on the wall glow briefly, just for a moment, at 7:00 a.m. He never quite got tired of that. Not the glow exactly. The fact that it happened at 7:00. Not 6:58, not 7:03. 7:00. Every morning, exactly on time. Some things he knew you can count on.